We continue to hold space for conversations that matter. One thing that we want to heal, awaken, and reconnect is our generational trauma. And we're going to be speaking to Dr. Gaspa, who's going to be unpacking this for us and how we can break our generational traumas. So maybe the women in your family never get married, or maybe the men in your family are raging alcoholics. Whatever the case is, it's important for us to kind of identify what our generational trauma looks like. Joining us right now is Dr. Gaspa Mazibuko to speak about reclaiming the African wholeness and dealing with the trauma and ancestral healing. Dr. Gaspa, good morning.
And Rising, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, darling?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me.
So, how do we identify generational trauma? How do we identify that, okay, this is something that runs in my family?
Yeah. So, in fact, I even refrain from calling it trauma. I just call it a pattern so that you're able to identify it and recognize it in the bloodline. Whether be it illness or substance abuse
Mm,
or unstable relationships
mm,
and such. And the best way to identify it is to first see it in yourself and then see if it relates to anyone else in the lineage, in the bloodline, whether your mother, your grandmother, some of the females or the males in your family, if you're a male, and being able to identify whether or not it's just a random thing that you're
mm,
experiencing and you have to learn from, or if it is something that is recurring in the lineage. And but first you must be able to identify it in yourself versus trying to look at it in other people because everyone has their own experience. If it
mm.
has nothing to do with you, leave it alone.
But now, how do we deal with that? I mean, how do we sit and realize that this is an ongoing pattern? I mean, in my family, there's this and this and this taking place. I mean, how do we deal with something like that?
First, we have to be honest about perhaps why it's happening, right?
Mm,
Most of these things are learned versus things that are, say, genetic, like illness. And even certain illnesses are just epigenetic, either due to environment or the way we deal with things. Like, for instance, certain inflammatory illnesses right now are due to how either the mom or the grandmother dealt with stress in the past. So when you identify certain things in yourself, you have to kind of trace back into where they come from. Say, um, unstable relationships are a result of how conflict is resolved because children learn about love through observation. We observe our parents, how they engage with each other, how they treat relationships, and then we that's why people would have mother wounds and father wounds and daddy issues and whatever we call it. This is due to how we observed our parents and how they dealt with their relationships, and therefore the healing then becomes your responsibility to say, okay, I'm not going to handle things the way my mom or my father did and choosing a different path. Because at the end of the day, breaking the cycle means taking a different path to how your parents or your grandparents would have handled a situation compared to you. So if you see, a challenge with health related issues, then it means it's your responsibility to be the one who wakes up and takes walks, to be the one who goes hiking and goes to the gym or eats differently to your family. You become responsible for how you move forward.
mm. But
That's
now,
breaking the cycle.
yeah, because
Yes.
it sounds quite complex though, because if you're telling me that I need to break a cycle, girl, that
Mm.
sounds a little heavy.
Yeah, it's basically you being the rebellious one and choosing a different path and saying, okay, you know what? I can see how this is not working for any of us. So, can I choose a different path that is going to make me happy and fulfilled? Not so much so carrying the lineage on my back and feeling like I must maintain traditions that are not serving us, especially when it comes to relationships. And, when you look at alcohol and substance abuse, that is just repressed emotions. It means people feel, but they're not processing. So they choose escapism and numbing with substances versus actually addressing things, going to therapy, healing. So when you choose to heal and you choose to put the bottle down or to put whatever substance down and actually get help, then that's you breaking the cycle, because then it ends with you. It means the next generation will not see the escapism.
You know, what you're saying now, it sounds scary. I'm not gonna lie, because I mean, imagine, in fact, let me bring it back home. My mom became a mom at a very young age. She was
Mm.
23 or 24 when she had me. Before that was my grandmother, who was 22 when she had my mom. And before that was her mother, who had her at a very young, I think 21. I'm 27 with no kids. And I don't
You did.
know, but look, I feel like, hey, I did something. Okay.
You did something big. That is huge. That is huge because um having children doesn't matter how old you are. I'm a mom and sometimes I feel like pulling out my hair. That's why I don't have hair anymore, girl. Because how it will stress you out. So you can imagine when you are not psychologically ready for that responsibility, and you're still a baby, you're still a princess,
I
and
just a
and
baby.
now you're just a baby, and now you have a baby that needs you to be an adult. That can put serious stress and responsibility, load on you that can be very difficult to handle. And it can also influence how you raise your children compared to how you would have if you were a lot more older, matured, and psychologically prepared. So what you have done is breaking the cycle. And there's a research study that I read about some years ago that however old a woman is when she experiences either sexual trauma or childbirth, she remains that age forever.
Oh, baby.
So your mom, your
Oh,
mom is 23.
oh, she's just a girl.
She's just a baby. So have some grace,
Oh.
for the
Oh
girl.
no, listen, if there's anyone I have grace for, it's my mother. But we're gonna get into that conversation. It is 6:40 Central African time. Dr. Gasper, please hang 10 for us. We're gonna take a short break and come back to this one. This is the Oasis.
Ease into your weekend morning. It's the Oasis with Ntsako Mohlanga. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa.
6:41 Central African time, 19 minutes before we head to the top of the hour. Dr. Gasper, we are talking about a generational pattern. I'm stealing your vocabulary, né? And I think it's important as well to identify these patterns, because you know what you're saying now. I don't know. Like I'm starting to like really think about like my life, and I'm the first woman in my bloodline to open a business. I'm the first woman in my bloodline to. Well, actually, funny enough, even with there's good generational patterns, right? When I think about
Yes.
my great grandmother, she was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher as well. My mother runs a training company, meaning she was also kind of in teaching, but not necessarily. And
Yeah.
I have a school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, but like when I see sometimes I'm like, oh, it makes sense why, like even like for example, even my job currently, it makes sense why things go well naturally because I'm like I'm kind of following the lineage, right? What happens when we step out of that alignment? Because I do believe, for example, one of my very, very good friends who happens to be on shift with me, Catherine Maleka, and she followed her generational lineage by adhering to the political side of life, right? I mean, I think it was her grandmother, if I'm not mistaken, or her aunt, was one of the first communicators within the ANC, and she's still there. And I
Mm.
don't know, but there's something about, aligning yourself to the generation, the fact that, my grandmother, yes, she was a teacher. She was one of the first teachers to invigilate for Afrikaans. And I speak
Mm.
Afrikaans very well. And now that I have a school, it's just naturally successful. What happens when we step into alignment, but also when we get out of alignment?
Mm. So there are things that are positive in our bloodlines that can aid us because they're just native to our genetics. When we follow through with them, we're just activating what's already existing and it will flow, but it does not mean that we are tied to anything. We still have our own paths, we still have our own journeys as different individuals. But when you do align yourself with something that already exists in the genetics, you get, spiritual and genetic backing, and the neurons are already active inside your system. They're there. So they'll just fire away in the most effortless manner versus starting a new neural pathway in your system. So the alignment is both scientific and also esoteric in the sense of the ones who've done this before will effortlessly back you because they're familiar with the path. Even if you choose a more modern version of what they did, they will still find ways to back you. But also, it just means you are continuing something that already exists versus starting in something new completely and having to find, to be a pathfinder and creating the new neural and genetic pathway for yourself.
Dr. M, Dr. G, can I ask you a
Yeah.
very, very controversial question? And I need to get your permission before I even ask this question.
I wonder. Yeah, sure.
Hey, give me a moment. Do you think when you see poor Black people, do you think it is because of our history? Because we went through the likes of slavery. I mean, we were uprooted from part of the richest parts of our history. We lived in beautiful homes. We had homes. We had villages. We had families. Do you think Black people are falling apart because of the disruption of our lineage, of our gifts? And I'm saying this because when you look at marriages even today, they're not being sustained. You look at Black men who are abandoning their families. And I'm sorry, but guys, after a while, we have to actually look a little bit deeper than just men are this, men are that, men ain't what, men are what. But what happened in our lineage? Do you think that disruption within our lineage caused all of this?
Yes, and a whole lot of other things. I'll share a more personal experience with you where I saw something similar in my bloodline where my great grandmother passed on when my grandmother was maybe 6 years old. And her dad had already passed on prior to her mom passing. So she grew up an orphan and she was passed from one family to the other. And this was during, colonial Africa, South Africa, during the apartheid era, where unfortunately the family member who was supposed to raise my grandmother sent her off to work in the farms, in the Buddha farms at the tender age of 8. And that started a hectic line of poverty in the bloodline where you can still, though people are doing better, but you can still hear the negative self-talk. You can still hear the negative perception of self. You can still, feel it in how people see and view money. There's a fear around it, mainly because of the foundation of it. So certain levels of trauma can lead then a bloodline, a nation, into responding from that trauma for generations and generations to come, especially if you constantly hear your parents saying, money doesn't grow on trees, money doesn't grow on trees. It creates a fear of money. And then eventually there's a belief that the only way to get money is through a specific way. And if that specific way doesn't pan out, then it means you are doomed. So there's that. That's why, you know, the employment rate is such a nightmare for everyone, because many people feel the only way to sustain themselves is through employment. The idea of starting something outside of employment is a rumor. It's what are you telling them? What are you saying? Because we've been made, even the education system prepares you for employment and not for independence. So one, remember also men were displaced. They had to leave their families to go work. So leaving your family is in the genetic, though it's inexplicable.
My
Why is there
goodness.
an urge to leave?
My goodness. I don't know why this is hitting me. Like, I think it's also because every day we need to make decisions about our lineage. We need to make decisions about the life that we want our generations to live, right? And you know, I can't help but also give credit to my siblings and I. I mean, I'm a firstborn, and we all, I'm not gonna lie, we are killing it. We've all got multiple degrees. We all have thriving careers. Like, everyone is doing it, you know? And I think we are aware of the fact that the generational trauma is that, you know, education is also very important. My grandmother, you know, she didn't leave a lot of money for us. In fact, she didn't even leave any money for us, but she left her graduation gown. And we all kind of sat down and had an agreement that, guys, we need to wear this gown. The gown needs to be generational. You know, a lot of, and you know what's so funny? I don't want to make this a racial thing, but Dr. Gaspa, let's talk. Can I tell you who actually knows about lineage and generation? White people.
Of course.
When you walk,
Generational wealth.
let me tell you, when you walk into a building or a hotel that is owned by a white person, they have the founding fathers picture there.
Yes.
There. With the picture to say, this is Dr. Watwati or this is Mr. Watwati. He started the whole, like, they know their stories. And it comes to my question now. How do we, as the generation that we have now, my siblings and I have this thing where every year we do sibling day. And it's something we want to have, you know, amongst the generations, you know, where we all come together as siblings and we kind of review the relationship that we've had. How do you create generational patterns, good and sustaining generational patterns?
It always starts with reflecting on self first and seeing the negative patterns in yourself and changing that. If you know that you'd look at your siblings and have jealousy, work on that, you know, so that when it comes to breaking the pattern of siblings not getting along, you are able to then break that cycle, because it starts with looking at your sister and seeing them doing a little better than you and feeling some type of way, and then keeping a distance because you're ashamed of your conditions. Fixing that within yourself and working on yourself, because at the end of the day, your sister can get close to you, but if you do not have it in you to do that, then you're continuing a lineage of siblings who do not bond, where the aunts don't get along. And that's where, you know, in African, and I don't know if it happens in white communities, but in African communities now, there's witchcraft and whatnot in families, simply because people are not willing to work on self and improve themselves. Instead, they will allow the green jealousy monster to interfere. And that in itself is still it's a pattern where the children will observe, oh, my aunts don't get along, then the next generation of aunts will not get along, you know. But when we work on ourselves and we build these new patterns that are going to sustain the bloodline, whether it's choosing education or choosing entrepreneurship or choosing to heal ourselves so that we can be better siblings and better sisters and better cousins, then we are starting new lineages that are completely different to, you know, oh, the father's side of the family is this and that.
Hey, Futsi, I wanted that one, yo. Because I realized that my brother, when he gets married, I'm the father side of the family, and worse, I'm the eldest. So I'm like, yay, his kids cannot know that. No, that's something we have to work on, you know?
Precisely. We need to break those patterns. And we've normalized such things where, like, we all believe that the father side of the family is this and that, which shows you that as a nation, there's something wrong. So
Dr.
we need to fix that.
Yeah, Dr. Gaspa, I'm so grateful for this conversation. I think you and I have really covered the basis of it. Are there any things that we can do? Do we wash our face with cinnamon? Do we have a candle that helps us break these things? I know that there's what do you call it? It's one with the rope where there's a black and a white candle, the rope. I forgot what it's called.
Yes, the cord cutting.
Cord cutting. There we go. Is there anything that we can do to kind of support the, team breaking generational trauma?
So we can actually break cycles, with these things. But when it comes to things like relationship traumas and substance abuse, we definitely need the help of, trauma-informed professionals to actually help you get to the root of what the problem is. But when it comes to certain things like we can use cord cutting rituals as such, to separate ourselves from certain behaviors. You can cut the cord between yourself and jealousy so that you can work on being a better version of yourself. You can cut the cord between yourself and say infidelity if you have that problem, and release yourself from certain things that can continue in the lineage. But most importantly, getting help, because we can't DIY our lives.
True. Dr. Gaspa, thank you so much for joining us this morning. A great conversation. And honestly, we are here on this earth, Mara, this earth. Yeah, shame. There's too many things to do. I mean, we just stepped out of the Pisces retrograde. And my only question is, what was that?
What was that?
No, what was that?
It is,
I'm a Pisces, so please understand.
You felt it.
Not even felt it. It felt me. It felt me. But thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope the next conversation will be us talking about, some of the achievements we've had while breaking our generational curses.
Yes, most certainly. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic stuff. It is 6:56 Central African time. That was Dr. Gaspa Mazibuko, and we were in conversation talking about how to break generational trauma.